thank you so much. This is the fourth conversation in the Sturm&Drang Studio session, a joint project developed by Fondazione Prada and ETH Zurich. The outline of the project and its aim are the investigation of contemporary CGI practices and how concept of authorship, creativity, and immaterial production have been in a way transformed or hybridized by the constant development of smart distributed technology. And today we're incredibly glad to be in talk with Artefactory Lab, a studio and a practice that has done, in my opinion, more to develop what is an image or what is a digital image in the field of architecture, and in a way, in the broader way, we understand what is a picture of contemporary life. So welcome, and the main idea of this project is to understand what are, condition of authorship, condition of production. And me, Fredi, and Niels have always believed in this concept called second creative class. And the main point about this, in a way, sort of immaterial theory is the fact that contemporary image production is not done anymore by authors or, in a way, self-made practitioners, but it is done by a broader collective of people that, in a way, are expanding the concept of technician or the concept of technique in the making an image. So we cannot anymore believe that an image is in a way, the production of one single person, but it is in reality much deeper connection between, technologies, production, rendering farms, your work, the collective work of the people that you need to interface while making renderings or while producing, in a way, matter for competition making, etc., etc., etc. And I always wonder, what do you feel about it? So how do you define yourself? Do you define yourself as in a way, advanced architectural photographer, a contemporary factory making images, or in a way, another field of architecture in itself?
First of all, I'm Eric Anton.
I'm Olivier Campagne.
And I'm Laura Di Credico.
So we are three of the 9 partners of Artefactory Lab. And to relate to your questions, I think we are close to architecture photographers. I think we don't define us as a field of architecture, even if we can have various approach, and Olivier can speak more about the relation he developed with architects. I feel more strongly related to photography, even if I have a background of as an interior designer and architect. So yes, it's a mix of these various things, but I don't think we could define ourselves as technicians. This is too far away now from what we do. We are really image makers with a way to look at architecture in a context.
But yeah, that's interesting what you say about that an image now is not anymore done by a single person. I immediately think about like this relation with architecture and the role of the image into the conception of the architecture as could be sometimes used as a tool. So it's not anymore sometimes the end product could be really introduced into the process of making architecture. So and this really depends on the teams we are working with. Sometimes you arrive at the end of the conception, and I think, I mean, in the work I'm doing, like I feel like that our work could be introduced earlier in the project. I feel that sometimes they need this. Really, sometimes they need to have this kind of images to not to. I don't know if it's a help. I mean, it could be as a like model making. It's really like could be seen as a tool also, and so that's why these images at the end, it's as you say, it's not like it's not a work of a single person. It's really like a result of multiple exchanges, multiple discussion, and it's like I don't think it's not a compromise, because then it's not like a neutral. At the same time, it's ambiguous, because it has sometimes a really strong feeling, a really strong emotion, and it's not like completely neutral images. So it's not like a gathering of multiple thoughts. It's it's a result of a discussion of, and I have sometimes this feeling that making images is a bit like making editing a movie. Like it could be like we had a discussion before, like it's
The director.
yeah, it's like, you know, this work between the director and the editor. It's really like this discussion while editing the movie. And sometimes we really spend a lot of time talking to the architect, trying to understand also what they want to explain about the project. You know, it's really this discussion, and when we immediately translate this word into 2D representation. So it's really this exercise of
I think
I feel it like this.
What is a bit specific about our work, but not about the office work, but I think for people doing computer graphics, for visualization of architecture, the architect is designing something. He has a rather precise idea of what he's doing. He asks us to make images, and we start producing. First of all, we discover an architectural object that we are not familiar with. And we have a camera, and we start shooting this object. And we show them these shots of this object. And it's a reflect of what they have produced, but seen through our eyes. And this comes, I think, always as a shock and a question for the architect. Because it's something that's escaping from him. And because we are trying also to understand what is this object? I mean, how defined it is, what are the parts that are finalized and are still in process, but at the same time to understand what is trying to communicate or to develop as an architectural concept. And it's telling us things, and we try to translate them into the image. And this reflection is a question for him. And usually it has an impact on the development of the project. And we are always complaining about the changes that the architect are doing on a project, while we are just trying to make a good image of this project. But at the same time, we are producing these changes, or we are provoking them without wanting to provoke them, but that's the result. Yeah.
And would this be the difference to photography, that as you described it, that it's a way of like almost like a model in the making of a project, or the shock?
No, I don't think so, because when we it's very different from somebody who's making a model. You're shooting the object as a photographer. So there is a point of view, which is the physical position of the camera, but also a point of view in terms of discourse. Yeah, topic. There is a point of view on this architecture. So we are not making a model and we are looking it from above and turning around as an architect is doing today in his office. We are looking at this object, already putting in the images elements of the surroundings and so on in the image, and we make a photography of this object, and that's already a critical point of view on the architecture, not in terms of I don't like what you, or I love a lot what you're doing, but simply by being an observer at the age of an observer of this object and already showing it in a quite realistic way in terms of materiality, of lighting. It becomes something very different.
You define yourself as, exact, in a way, architectural photographer, which I believe is completely true. And but I do wonder, this is a bit of an abstract question. I'm a fan of a Scottish philosopher called Duns Scotus and his purvey of extreme realism. And I always wonder what do you think about exactitude? So in my practice daily, I have to, in a way, fight against the possibility of a 3D object of not being precise. And so much of the work that we do is also in searching softwares that can provide exact 3D objects. So for basically architectural production. And I wonder, how do you feel in relation to that? So if you are a photographer shoots objects that stays in reality, and you are shooting something that in a way stays in the software environment. And I know that the software is like a photographical studio, but I always wonder if you had any thought about what is an exact object and what are, in a way, the features that define a perfect object to be shot. So in a way, I always wonder if the scenes that you make or the photos that you create or in a way the reality that you produce is done basing your work on exact 3D objects of what we're going to see, what is going to be built, what you imagine is going to be built, or it is about parts making and post-production. So I wonder what is the percentage of reality also as software reality in your work.
Can I express myself on this? Yeah. Because I think there might have like two different possible answers to this question, because there's a part of me, because I asked myself this question when I was studying architecture. I was really impressed by a book it's called The Architects of the Parthenon by Eric Carpenter. And in this book, he talks a lot about the errors that were introduced, like they really wanted to introduce the error in the calculation and in the structure, because this error gave like more humanity to the architecture. And so for myself, I tend to divide at the beginning of the process. I tend not to be super precise, because I think that partially the error could give really that part of realism that the straight in a human computer made object cannot give. You cannot really approach reality if you don't take into account errors and imperfections. And this is like a really important question for us, our relationship with reality, looking at what's around us, etc. But the other possible answer, I don't know if it's the same for them, but for me is that, of course, you need really a strict precision on a lot of elements, and mostly on details and architectural details, because to produce images like realistic images, you need to really produce the details, and that's very important. So this is important. And so one thing, like from one side it's important, and on the other side it's also negligible. I don't know if this term exists in English, but yeah, I think for my side it's like this. And yeah,
I think one of the characteristics of our practice, not in the sense of office, but in terms of praxis, is that we've been very intense on architectural details, mainly because in order to make a virtual photography of an architecture to be realistic, you have to introduce the elements, the details that will give materiality to the image. It comes from, I think, partly our architectural background, having as a result, very often we ask the architect, but what is it? How is it done? And we have the capacity with our background to introduce in the image architectural details that can be then a discussion with the architect, but we can introduce these details. And it's also this relation we have with realism, or photographic realism. You have people producing images that have a kind of instant impact. And if you enter the image, if you zoom in the image, what looks realistic disappears, fades, because there is no precision in the image. In our case, it's almost the contrary. Sometimes we are a bit disappointed when we see one of our images in small on Instagram, or saying this image is not that as good as I thought. And we tend to have images with a lot of details, a lot of depth. You can enter the image and go through it and find also framings. You can go as deep as we manage to produce in the image. And this has two results. One is the possibility to show architecture, and for us also the possibility to reframe in the image and find sometimes better images than the general images inside the image.
Yeah, it's what you say with back more than 10 years ago with Jean Nouvel, like you could make with one single image, you could make 10 images with by zooming, framing some detail. Even if it's a large viewpoint, you can really make some nice framing of the image and make 10 images of one of like a fractal object. But to follow what Eric said about the details, I'm thinking like I mean, the danger in making 3D images, it's also this this possibility to really go into details. And I mean, personally, I fall 10 years back into this danger. I mean, that's really you know, you can fall inside and forget really completely about the full images you are producing, and that's really a danger. And it's really easy to go into the details, and that's why right now from my side I really try to take really much more distance with the images and really and exactly see it as a stamp, as a small images, and trying to like Instagram, like this Instagram is like when you put in images on Instagram, all the details you have put inside suddenly disappear, and then what you see it's really really a far view of your images. And I'm right now more concentrating about making this so it's about also concentrating on the framing, on the
That's more.
that's what you see is like 9,000. Sorry, what you see is like 1,000 images of a single random camera going through a project of Baukunst and Brüter in Zurich. It was for a competition, and this was done really about trying to instead of trying to frame the interior project with the camera. I was okay. Let's the computer randomly make framing, and I will look at what it produce, and what you discover is like there is really some framing you didn't even thought about making, and that's really, I think it's really that's kind of these features, and it's about the randomness, about accident. I think it's really interesting, but that's what you can do with the computer. You cannot do this in real life instead of maybe using a robot. But I mean, that's all this power of the computer you can use here, and then it's really so that in a way you kind of somehow you kind of approach reality, because then you are close to this accident. You are not designing you are not choosing anything here. You are just let the computer show you the result, and it's a bit like when you're on site, you are just experimenting this accident, this banality somehow. That's something that Eric can talk about.
What was very interesting in this process, where you in a way randomize the trajectory of a camera, is that what is expected from us is you take an object and you propose the best way to show and communicate and make desirable this object. When a photographer is architecture photographer or photographer is outside in front of something, there are events, objects that exceptions that can become part of a photography and make the photography interesting. And what struck me in the process that Olivier developed was, it was in a way mimicking the discovery, that the possibilities of discovery that a photographer has in reality, in the outside world. So suddenly it was having something, proposing you images, and instead of being focused on, okay, I'm framing this image like this, putting these elements in places in the frame, so composing the image more like a painter. Suddenly what you become is somebody having a large set of images and choosing the best photography you can find in this set.
So it's a bit like, so it's a bit like, I'm thinking about this like Jean Nouvel, like with one image you you make 1,000, and here with 1,000 you make one.
Yeah,
So it's like
to quickly jump in, I think you had so many interesting expressions. I really like the expression of the accident that you mentioned, but of course also of the shock. And then also you mentioned emotion, which I think is quite surprising. And then also, lastly, you also mentioned the idea of the best perspective, the kind of ideal image. And what really strikes me when I kind of browse through your portfolio on your website is that always your perspective are kind of seemingly the ideal perspective, but then they also always have some sense of kind of a disbehavior or an accident in them, which is quite surprising. So I wonder, because of course you are like commissioned to create ideal images, to kind of, you follow kind of the longing of realism, of course, because also they have to serve a seductive purpose. But then I quite clearly see that you always, there, in my opinion, I think you add like an element which is disturbing, which is an accident and has for me a certain sense of a subversion. But I'm quite curious how you would, in this sense, how you would describe this seemingly accidental layer to your work.
Here, I think, okay, first of all, you have to understand that our relation to image has changed during time. It's a long process. I mean, I've been doing images for 20 years. And of course, you can imagine how the tools we are using have evolved during this time. And we work more and more with photography. And not in the way that, okay, I make my 3D model and I will compose with photographic elements, but we have a practice also as photographer. I think when we look some images that are very seductive of buildings in a beautiful landscape, and it's very impressive and lyric. First of all, what we notice is that we mainly work into urban context. Architects do building mainly in cities. So we have an urban context. So we can photography this context. And we do what is called the site insertion. You put the building in the location where it's going to be. And here, in terms of, so we go and we take pictures, or sometimes we commission a photographer to shoot the location. And here it's quite complex because you are shooting a location where either there is an object that is going to disappear, or you photography a void. And you are going to occupy with your 3D model, with your project, the center, more or less, of the image. So when you're shooting, you have to, in a way, forget the center of the image and focus on the surrounding of the center. So you have to look at you have to produce an interesting image looking at the borders, which is a quite special exercise. And here there is a question of criticism, and I think it's something, at least personally, I'm more and more interested by. We all love photographers, and we don't love all with the same intensity the same ones. And there are usually architectural photographers. And I think that when you shoot a place, you have a critic relation to this specific location, to this environment. A whole part of the production of renderings is dedicated to seducing a jury, people, and they tend to present ideal version of the city. You know, everything is reconstructed in 3D, cleaner than it is, and so on. And going on a location and shooting this reality is sometimes a critic of this idealization of the city, of the surrounding. And I think what we are, at least what we are developing in terms of photography and the way we make images, I think that are quiet images is a partly critic of the way architecture is represented mainstream, partly the result of the evolution of our way of seeing architecture, and also a design in terms of how do you seduce a jury or people you have to convince. My approach of this is that if you make an image, a picture that has already qualities, a photography that have qualities, that you make a rendering that is matching all the lighting, the parameters of this photography, you produce an image of a reality, a photographic reality, but in a way, you tell the people, look, this object, this project is here. It's not idealization, a dreamlike image of the future. It's something that is present, that in a way my way of seducing or convincing is to say, look at this object, it's here. So why would you contest his qualities? You can see already what his presence is. And I think for us, it's a very different approach from people who are more lyric in their production. That's what I call the heroic images. We are anti-heroic in our images. We are more trying to act an object as not possible to contest anymore in the image.
And was this from the beginning? I wonder, like, if you look back in the evolution of your work, because digital images can age very fast. So I wonder, what do you think if you look at your early work and what happened in the evolution?
A photographer was hired in New York to make a shooting. The image came as a diapositive that we scanned. So you can imagine how far away we are from having a digital photography. And when you look at the image, small like this, it looks quite natural, but it's really an old image. And of course, if you zoom in, there are no details because it's 1993. But it still basically works And it works mainly because the photographer did a good job. And I have another one. I think it's 1 year later. I think the software must have been Lightscape. I don't know. And so, again, technically, compared to the possibilities we have of making an image today, it's ridiculous. But in the context of this project, having an architect able to say, in this image, it's Paris, it's gray. Most of the time, Paris is gray. And accepting this image, in a way, very natural, banal. And again, it's more than 15 or 17 years ago. And it's still, in a way, it's still a functioning image. I think when you are...
Yeah, but it's almost something you can make now. I
have
the impression that technically, it's, I mean, it's when you say it's ridiculous right now, I'm not sure. I mean, you...
No, I mean, the means, the tools we had to make this image.
Yeah, they're already, yeah, okay, but then the quality, yeah, that's what you said, like the quality of the image is it's still something you can do right now. I have the impression.
And this interest that it's so gray, where is it coming from? Because it's interesting that you did it already back then, because it's still the same. One could like think you would do a spectacular image with blue skies and many people, but often it's only little people, it's very gray, and the images seem to be kind of like a boring Sunday. Where does this pictorial quality come from?
I think it comes simply from the fact that we were already questioning a bit our relation to the image, questioning a bit the relation to the context. I mean, trying to make a good image with a reality that people don't expect to see in the representation expected for architecture. Right? Yes, a sunny day and so on, blue sky, happy people, white people on the foreground and so on. And these are early tries, but it became more and more a question and a more conscious process. Today, when I'm shooting, I'm really I have a critic relation to the representation of the architecture. I have it's not a big critic, like I'm not in a fight. I mean, it's only architecture images, but I don't like the lie. I don't like lying a lot about the context. I don't like to have people replacing everyday people, badly, poorly dressed, not white, walking on the street where the sidewalks are not perfect. These are realities, and if you focus on the photography you are making, you can make them beautiful. It's not degrading the image. In the contrary, you can give back something of the qualities of an area where people are living by capturing it with tenderness, with focus, and interact also. You are interacting with the site, meaning that you can spend hours, you can wait for the light, you can wait for people to come in the frame, you can wait for the accidents, and obtain a base image that has qualities that respect the location, this reality.
So also a thing to say. So you said that in a way unmasking or in a way not filtering the landscape, not faking reality, at least for the percentage of reality that is in a render, will make a perfect picture. So in a way we are not CGI washing the landscape. And I wonder.
I don't think it's a perfect image.
No, I know.
It's not yeah.
I understand this.
It's a difficult word to manipulate when you are trying to convince people, when you are a building seller.
I know. Related to, in a way, photographic and architecture work and the mainstream or the standards by which we can produce or think that an image is correct today. I wonder if you have any, I believe that, in post-war America, Ezra Stoller, in a way, captured and helped developed, was a vector of spreading or distributing the values and in a way, aesthetics of modern architecture with white and black and white images and very sharp and very perfect. And I think that in a way, we still understand modernism because of the photographer's work. And I think that you are in a way becoming a sort of post-Ezra Stoller for depth capitalism. So capitalism that deals with depth and the deepness of an image. And I wonder if you ever thought of your work as, in a way, something that is streaming the values of contemporary European architecture, and in a way also making the case for a flattening of standards. So now we believe that almost all the architects that I see, they tend to do images like you, even in, when a building is realized. Most of the other CGI studios are working in a direction that is trying to mimicking, in a way, the sort of Bressonian approach that you have to an image. And I wonder if you feel these, and if you have any, in a way, critique or idea on what you're doing to, the contemporary status of portrayal or rendition of modern contemporary architecture.
Okay, I just like you say, Eric, like in the photorealism approach. So I mean, I see it as it arrived in our work not as an accident, but we didn't really thought about it. It's not like we plan it. So I mean, what you are talking about. So I mean, I feel also the same. I'm really working in let's say in real time, and I mean, it's difficult to have to take distance to what you are doing. I mean, we are making it. We don't know where we're going, and if it has, as you might say, that there is sometimes a wrong approach.
I have wrong.
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't have this distance with the work I'm doing. I just I think it's exciting and yeah, it's really part of our experience, and we are not really planning anything. We are just working on the path, and we are making it. And I don't think we have such an influence on architecture. I don't think. I mean, it's we are just a small studio making images, and if people are copying our work, influenced by our work, I mean, there are other studios that influence other work. We are not. There is not a single way to make images in architecture. That we have many examples other kind of way of making images. We went into this way. We didn't invent anything, and architecture. And the question is about does architecture can work without our images? That's the question. I hope. I don't know. I don't know what you.
Yeah, I think I have an idea on this because what we do is express something, okay, in a form of an image, and it's a little bit strange to imagine our work like as we were in a box, creating an image and like giving this image a certain kind of qualities that are always more or less the same because we have a style, etc. Because I think also this way of representing architecture is like the result of many years of working with architects, with a lot of architects. And so I think what we produce, what we make and take out is also it's mostly the result of what was given to us, the input. So it's not that and is consequential. I think the images, the aesthetic you refer to is like the Bruter, MP2F, Mioto, Baukunst. It's this kind of representation is really close to their image. It's not their image, their architecture. It's really connected. Cannot really work with other kind of architectures, and that's
you
why
cannot imagine the number of times somebody's showing us an image.
Yeah.
And I want this quality, but my building is in concrete, and there is a total gap between the image they desire and what they are doing. But yes, they are inspired or touched by an image.
Yeah, and that's the construction of the image, not itself, but also the image of the image, the thing we intend by image, our way of doing images, and it's I think I realized because I realized that that there's an influence because I'm like I'm a little bit younger than them, and I studied not so long ago, so yeah, me too, I was influenced by this. And when I work in some architectural practices, I could totally feel this influence. So I understand they don't really see this, but I totally agree. But I don't think it's like just an aesthetic influence. It's like a way of feeling the architecture, wanting to represent architecture that is connected to the contemporary French architecture mostly.
And I think here I have a bit of perspective because I have been doing this for a long time, and I think there are. I have to give you context. First of all, we are French. There are a lot of people doing renderings in France, and there is now almost a tradition of architecture visualization. This comes from mainly the lack of capacity of people to interpret the architectural documents that gave a lot of power to images. And so we had more and more people doing renderings and doing images instead of, you cannot present plans and section in a jury. They can't read the documents. In Portugal, you have renderings, you have submission without any images. Here it's impossible. And then there is a context of what kind of images were produced in France at a time. And Oliver is showing two images. One is the photography of a building built, and the other one is the rendering that was made for the competition. And I know that this image had a lot of impact on architects, because at that time, when Olivier made this image, the kind of images produced in France was completely different. There were not only lyric images, but also very imprecise, evanescent images, you know, where you have a feeling of the architecture, but if you look at it, you can't see the architecture. And this kind of images was produced for a specific reason, or it became fashionable for reasons. In France, the people buying architecture was mainly the public sector, and so we had competitions, and images are more and more produced, and the architect who designs feels trapped by images that are in a way too precise for what they want, already too realistic in a way, and Nouvel used to say it, it's in advance on the design process. So the architect was imprisoned by an image that he had to fulfill, and feeling that he wasn't ready in his conception. And this was the result of the way the architecture was produced. And a way to break or move the walls of this prison was to make very atmospheric images that gives you a glimpse of the architecture, but you can't go into the details. So this became fashionable. All the images were like this, and I guess it became all frustrating, not only for the architect, but also for the public looking at these images, because we had some failures, like Léal was, when you see the image that was the rendering and the building, people felt cheated by the project. And at the same time, Olivier made this image, and a lot of architects told us, you are finally showing architecture without noise, without, in a very quiet, frontal, silent and precise way. And for some architects, it was a relief to have a kind of honest, soft representation of the image. And I guess it became at a point fashionable, but here I can argue about fashionable, because this looks like architecture photography, and is architecture photography fashionable?
But thanks so much for it was really, yeah, super interesting to.
You want to stop now, because we can do 2 more hours. It was a pleasure.
Have a great day.